Will you pray with me? God, give us strength and wisdom as we face the days ahead. Amen. The Granby Heights condo fire was probably the largest residential structure fire I ever responded to as a firefighter. The town of Granby, Massachusetts, had a volunteer fire department that lost control of an active fire burning in a row of connected condo units. Amherst, the department that I served, was called in for what's called mutual aid. When we arrived, 5 of the condominiums were already a total loss. There was no fire stop in the attic crawl spaces above the unit, so the fire was just traveling down that open attic. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured during this fire, but I'm here to tell you it was a nightmare of a day. When we arrived on scene in Engine 4, the hose lines coming in from other trucks that were already there looked like a plate of tangled spaghetti. It was the middle of the summer and the heat index was in excess of 100 degrees. So ambulances were lined up, running air conditioning and stocked with fluids. You would work the fire until your tank ran out of air, at which point you were pulled, sent to an ambulance, pumped with fluids through an IV, and sent back into the fire. When in the structure, it wasn't only the fire or the exhaustion that required your attention. You see, multiple teams were working the blaze from different directions to try to trap it. If you were working an axe or a chainsaw to breach a wall, you had to be careful not to send that axe or chainsaw into another firefighter working the same wall on the other side. This went on for hours. 7 condos were total losses, with another 3 damaged badly. I can remember a few other times in my life when I was existing in that state of exhaustion. But then came the cleanup. You don't have the adrenaline running anymore. And 4 towns responded to that fire. All of the tools, all of the equipment had to go back into the appropriate trucks. The spaghettied hose lines had to be untangled, rolled, carried back to the appropriate engines. And the building still had hot spots. So we had to douse them in teams of 2 or 3. I was on the 2nd floor during this stage at the end. I was on the 2nd floor of one of the center units hitting those hot spots, and we were collecting discarded tools with my captain, Kevin Gladu. There was no roof left above us, so we were completely exposed to the sun, wearing 60 pounds of turnout gear after working most of the day in these conditions. We walked around and Kevin noticed an axe that was resting on the opposite wall from where we were standing. So he went to collect it by walking around the outside of the room, staying close to the wall, which is standard practice because that part of the floor has the most structural support. He picked up the axe, he held it in both hands, turned, and instead of traversing the wall in the same manner he had done entering the room, he walked directly across the center of the floor towards me. It's a once-in-a-lifetime mistake, only made when existing in that state of exhaustion. He made it halfway across a ceilingless room, and the floor gave out. Kevin, the man who taught me everything that I knew about firefighting, the father of 2 daughters, suddenly dropped 3 feet into the floor. The only reason he didn't fall all the way through, he was holding that axe in 2 hands, perpendicular to the floor. Once the handle on one side and the blade on the other hit the floor, it immediately dispersed his weight and stopped the rest of the fall. Had he gone all the way through, he would have also fallen through the dining room below us and into the basement, now flooded with the water that was used to extinguish the fire, wearing that 60 pounds of turnout gear. Quickly tucking his utility belt over the long handle of the axe and bracing himself with one hand, Kevin reached up and said, "Help now," in a quiet but commanding voice. As he reached up, I reached out. And I know it may sound like I'm making myself out to be the hero of the story, but with Kevin's constant and unrelenting training, without that, I would have had absolutely no idea what to do. Kevin saved himself by training me, really. Period. Hard stop. Kevin reached up. I reached out. Reaching for something, anything, it's so common as to be mundane, isn't it? And reaching out can save a life. You can reach for a tube of toothpaste, or you can reach for someone falling through a floor. It's the same reach. The woman in the story from Matthew, afflicted for these long years, has faith enough in Jesus to reach out her hand and touch his robe, knowing that there will be an impact in her life. She who the world has called unclean, who has suffered, who is, I'm sure, exhausted and lonely, stretches out her hand. When the woman reaches out to touch Jesus' robe, it's not only a matter of faith, but it is also indicative of deep trust. No amount of just simple desire will ever attain that depth of awareness and humility. This trust, her trust, it's born of conviction. To stretch out our hands to reach for something, it's not something we're born knowing how to do. It's not even something we're born able to do. I'm paying very close attention as Winnie learns to reach out. First, it requires reflexes, then depth perception, then coordination. All of this takes months. Her eyes have finally developed to a point where she can see across a room. When her mama or her brothers walk in, she reaches out, she stretches out her hands, and she quivers with anticipation. And someday if her brothers jump scare her, or her mama makes her mad, that blissful trust she has right now will at least temporarily dissolve. And she won't reach out with that same eager confidence. To reach out and to trust are intertwined in family and in the life of faith. To reach out and trust are inseparable in forming and maintaining community. Now, as a pastor, if someone reaches out to me in their hour of need, I recognize they are saying, "I trust you enough to do this." And to be crystal clear, I may have seminary training, I may have experience as a pastor, but we are all called to do that work in our own way. That's what it means to be church. There are two things that strike me in this moment. One is the notion that we, all of us, as people of God, act as the hands and feet of Christ. The second is what Martin Luther called the priesthood of all believers. We all have a role, and it is a sacred role. This story of the woman is such a brief aside in an otherwise breathtaking story that it's easy to kind of skim past it. The story says Jesus is on his way to raise a little girl from the dead. That is the front page story that's printed above the fold. Regardless of what actually physically happened in that instant, this woman stretched out her hand. I can say that for me, her trust in this man she didn't know, that's the miracle. The Gospels tend to use healing miracles to get our attention, but they're not the point of the stories. Notice that the leader who wants Jesus to heal his daughter also reaches out to Jesus. Jesus is speaking, and suddenly a leader came in and knelt before him. This is interpersonal outreach, a request for help. Like the woman who stretches out her hand to touch Jesus, this leader stretches out his heart to do the same. He begins, "My daughter has just died. I cannot even fathom." He makes himself vulnerable. He exists in his humanity. He reaches out. He asks for help. He trusts. He trusts. Communion is one of the ways that we reach out. We trust. When we reach out to accept the bread or the cup, we can imagine our own hands stretching out to touch the robe of Jesus, asking for help in our own way. Anyway. I don't know. I will say that many years after that fire in Granby, I was deep in the midst of my struggles with addiction. I knew that I had a problem and I didn't know who to call. And then, without really thinking about it, I picked up my phone and I reached out to Kevin. I reached out to him. And that was the beginning of the journey that saved me. The beginning of my healing journey. What do you need, friends? What do you need to reach out for? What do you need? Recognizing that sometimes we are the ones making the request, and other times we are the recipients of the request. I also ask, who is reaching out to you? Do you need to reach out, or do you need the outreach? Either way, do it. Do it. It might save your life. It might save someone else's. Trust. Do it. Amen.
Amen.